Alright guys, today we're going to talk about the industrial age challenges. So, with any industrial revolution, with any revolution, you're going to have challenges that people have to face. So with this one, we're going to see the challenges people have to face as factories become more prominent around the world. So, Great Britain, remember we talked about this yesterday, Great Britain is going to be the starting point. Great Britain was sitting on all this coal and iron, they had all this money, they were ready to go to industrialize. Now, other countries are not going to be far behind. Specifically, Germany, France, and U.S., they're bigger, they're going to have more natural resources than Britain, so they're able to take the British industrialization and really make it prosper and grow it. Now, other nations are going to be slower to industrialize. Russia, remember we talked about Russia, anytime the other countries get the iPhone 7, Russia's getting the iPhone 6, Russia's going to be late to the game, along with Eastern and Southern Europe and Africa, Latin America, and Asia. This is where you're going to have this first world versus third world. These first world countries are going to be the industrialized countries. The third world countries are going to be the primitive countries. They're going to be the places that these industrial countries are going to get their natural resources to fuel their factories. So, with factories, people are going to have to start going to their job instead of the jobs coming to them. That was a big difference, remember, from yesterday, 1750 versus 1850. So, you're going to see urbanization. Urbanization is cities are growing bigger as more people move into them to find jobs. So, cities are going to get bigger, towns are going to become cities. New York, Chicago, Detroit, they're going to become central points in America because all the jobs are in their locations. So now, there are urban challenges. This lesson today, we're talking about the challenges that people face when you have industrial revolution, and those are going to be pollution, tenements, water, disease, fire, and crime. Now we're going to talk about each one of these more in depth right now. So pollution, what to do with all this trash? More and more people are living in a smaller area, so you're going to have more trash. So where to send this? Everybody's producing these mass-produced goods, and they're cheap, so people aren't focusing on keeping them. They're just going to throw them out if they're done with it. If it's broken, they're not going to worry about fixing it. That's going to cause a bunch of trash. Coal-powered factories is going to cause air pollution, so people are breathing in all this polluted air. And then you, of course, have wastewater runoff that's going to pollute the lakes and rivers. No one is making sure to handle this runoff. There are no state or federal regulations about what to do with runoff, what to do with pollution. None of that exists because this is something new that everybody's dealing with. Housing. You have large number of people moving into a small area. So cities are going to grow up, not out. They're going to start building taller buildings, and people are going to live in what's known as tenement houses. And this is an example in the image right here. Each window is essentially an apartment. So a family, it can not just be your immediate family, cousins, aunt, uncles, grandparents. They're all going to live in this one room. The problem is you have very limited access to natural light. You have hardly any fresh air. Bathroom facilities, there might be one bathroom on this floor for all these people, and no exits. If you've seen the cartoon Hey Arnold, that's an example of tenement houses where all these different people live in a house together and they share a bathroom, and they're being rented out by the people that own the building, and the people renting them and paying a monthly rent for those rooms. Water. The drinking, cooking, and bathing water all comes from the lakes and rivers, and this is waste runoff going into this. Raw sewage, industrial waste. This is causing waterborne diseases such as cholera. Cholera is a big deal. People are dying from this. It is devastating communities because cholera is when you have fecal matter in the water, and people start getting dehydrated and they think they need to drink more water, and they're drinking more water, and they're just helping fuel the problem. And dysentery, a big disease that comes off this, which causes people to get very dehydrated. Disease, go along with that, you have more frequent interaction, so closer people live together, the more likely diseases to spread. That's been around ever since people started living in settlements, villages. Closer proximity you are to other people, higher likelihood of getting diseases. You have poor working conditions, there's no regulations in the jobs, and you have spoiled and unclean food, and people are having to eat what they can find, they're having to eat what they can afford. So fire. This right here, image of the Great London Fire that burned half of London down. There are no building codes. There's no rules about how houses are supposed to be made, how they're supposed to be built. This is leading to people cutting corners. Majority of houses were made out of wood. And they're so close together that when one catches on fire, it's going to spread quickly and catch the other houses on fire. And it doesn't help that most people's lighting is by candles or gas to heat and light their homes, which is just a ticking time bomb in their houses. So, you will have the fire departments created during this time period to help meet the threat of fire, to help stop fires like this from happening again. And of course, in any big cities, the biggest issue you're going to have is crime, as people are more desperate because of the working conditions, living conditions, not as many jobs because everybody's moving to the cities. You're going to have crime rising in the cities. So you're going to have a police force created to combat this crime. Also, the more and more crimes that were punishable by death are now not punishable by death. There are very few crimes punishable by death. So now you're going to need more prisons to house all the criminals that cannot be killed. So, urban transformations. As people are moving and building cities, as you can see right here, you're going to have cities being laid out in grid formations. Like New York City, Manhattan Island, everything is laid out. You can see exactly where the roads are. You can see where the houses are, the streets, because it allows you to more efficiently use the land. And also gas and electric lighting is going to appear, which is going to help people get around at night, and it's going to modernize the cities. And when steel is introduced, it allows the buildings to go taller and taller. You're going to see the end of skyscrapers that are 10 stories tall. You're going to see skyscrapers going up to 100 stories tall. Now, the problem with the factory work is monotonous, which means people are doing the same job over and over. So if you don't know what monotonous means, make sure you write that down. Shifts are 12 to 16 hours. That means you're having about 8 hours of freedom, and you're supposed to be getting about 8 hours of sleep a day, especially kids. Kids working in factory, no shoes. And there are no safety precautions. Very dangerous. A kid at risk of losing a toe, hurting his legs, losing a hand, finger, all this. And there is no safety precautions. There's no precautions being taken to make sure people are safe in their work environment. Now, education during this time. Education was essentially being arranged to teach the 3 R's to get people trained to work in the factories. Arithmetic, math, reading, writing. You taught punctuality. That's why we have bells today. People need to know to work on time. So the bells were to teach you to be to class on time, to train you to work on time. And also training obedience to authority. Teachers equal bosses. You obey your teacher, you obey your boss. And then self-discipline instilled a hard work ethic to get people to know that life isn't going to be handed to them. Nothing's free. You have to work hard to earn the money. So, women and children were the preferred labor force because they were easier to intimidate, they were cheaper, and they were smaller. So you could pay them less because they weren't the breadwinners of the family. The husband was supposed to be making the money to take care of the family. This was just extra money. Smaller, they could put their hands in the machine, didn't have to stop the machines. They took up less room, and easier to intimidate if they try to slack off or speak out of turn, you could use violence to get them to get back to working. If you got orphans, you hit the gold mine, because there was no one to miss them if they died in a factory accident, no one to get upset if they got injured. So you could just get one, have them work. If they got injured, send them back to the orphanage and just get another one. That sounds messed up, but that's the mentality that these factory owners had during this time period. So you did have unions, but the unions are outlawed by the government because it was bad for business, and the government is making money based off the unions. They tried labor strikes, boycotts, collective bargaining to end unfair labor practices, but without government support, nothing was going to happen. You do have the Luddite movement. So you have artisans. Remember, before you had factories, you had artisans. They were trained to make goods. They're fighting back against factories because they're going to be out of a job, because no one's going to buy stuff from them and pay the expensive price when they can get it cheaply from a factory. So they try to commit acts of sabotage and arson, but it doesn't work. Artisans just eventually slowly die out. You do have Methodism, Christianity, New Branch. John Wesley creates it. You get personal salvation through missionary work. Not just faith that's going to get you to heaven, but you have to do missionary work. You have to go preach the Word of God and help the less fortunate. And their focus is with the Salvation Army. They're going to reform the alcoholics and prostitutes through soup, soap, and salvation. They're going to feed you, they're going to clean you, and they're going to save your soul through Jesus Christ. So that's it for the industrial challenges. That's how some of them were trying to be fixed. The new institutions that were raised out of this. Next, after industrialization, we're going to look at the economics of the 19th century, and then we're going to talk about imperialism, which is fueled by the Industrial Revolution.